Today we will touch on the very sensitive topic of abortion, and we will look at the consequences and the aftermath of having made a decision like that and how it affected one's life. And so today I have with me Rona Mitchell, who has gone through the procedure and will share with us what life was like for her after her abortion. So Rona, tell me, what was your experience like, or what was your life circumstances like when you fell pregnant, and what made you decide that abortion was a suitable solution?
I was 17 and I guess in my teenage years they were quite turbulent. There were a lot of family challenges that had gone on in my life. And I kind of felt like I was at a point where I was starting to mend some of those pieces and starting to make some headway in my life. So at the time I was studying vet nursing, and as a child I'd always had a dream of being a vet, and because of choices that I'd made, I guess I'd derailed from that path, and so I'd say that I felt like I was starting to get back on track, and this was a second shot and maybe the next step down from fulfilling that dream. I was living with my boyfriend at the time, and actually with his family, and we were just typical Kiwi youth, irresponsible and party going, and I guess living quite a reckless life in our social life. But in my own journey I thought I was starting to make some headway in life, to be honest,
So what were your feelings then when you discovered that you were pregnant?
My feelings were that I'd stuffed up, that this was going to ruin my life, that I'm just repeating the cycle of everyone else in my family who's gone before me, having babies out of wedlock, too young, not being responsible, not being able to have a stable home for a child. And certainly it was derailing my plan for my life at the time.
Why did you feel the need to terminate the pregnancy? What were your reasons behind that?
I guess for myself, I grew up, my mum was a solo mum. My father, my biological father, left her when she told him that she was pregnant and denied that I could possibly be his child. And so there were complications involved, growing up in that situation. My grandparents ended up raising me, and Mum went on to have other children and marry and so forth. But I grew up with this sense of I was an unwanted pregnancy, and here I am now, similar age, and I have a pregnancy too, and I only shared that I was pregnant with my grandfather. Now, he raised me, so he was really like my father figure in my life, and we were quite close. And I guess he shared a lot of the same concerns that I had, that here we go again, you're repeating the cycle of the rest of our family. And he encouraged me to abort the baby because I guess he was seeing that he shared the same thoughts, that maybe I was getting back on track in life and going to make something of my life, and here this was going to just muck everything up.
What did your partner think at this stage of the pregnancy, aborting, adopting, keeping the baby? What was his input or his thoughts about it?
Very neutral, He was supportive of whatever I chose, but not really putting forward any suggestions either. So, very neutral. You see, it is legal in New Zealand, but you have to meet certain criteria. And one of the criteria, which I think a lot of pregnancies that were in my situation, which is purely contraception, how they manage to fit that into the criteria is one of the points is that if the doctor believes that going through with the pregnancy will cause you, the wording is serious mental harm, then they can recommend an abortion. So I guess that was the category I would have fit into, and yet there was nothing really to state that that was going to be a reality. How it works is you go to the clinic and you have an interview with a nurse or a doctor, and they state that to you. They say, in order for it to be legal for you to have an abortion here in New Zealand, we need to be satisfied that going through with this pregnancy will cause you serious mental harm. Do you agree that this would cause you serious mental harm? And the reality is, a young person who, or whatever age you are, who's chosen to already have an abortion, well, of course the easy answer is yes. Now you've ticked the box and you've now made it legal. However, there's no counselling that takes place beforehand. They might run through, these are the risks involved, this and this. Are you still okay with going through with it? You say yes, and now it's fine. In hindsight, what I've found is you needed time. You needed time to understand fully what you're getting yourself into, and how real those consequences are, and maybe someone to kind of unravel some of the thoughts that are motivating you to want to make this decision. So for example, in my situation, it was, this baby's going to ruin my life. I have a plan, this is ruining my plan, I'm not going to manage, it'll mean I'm a failure. Very simple counselling would have unravelled that and said, well actually, you're not. It's not necessarily going to ruin your life. It could be a big blessing to help me to see it from a different perspective, even if the counsellor was neutral, just to place another perspective into the mind of the person, rather than leaving them with whatever thoughts are running through their head in a crisis moment of their life when time is against you. I feel is quite irresponsible, and leaves a vulnerable person making a foolish decision.
Rona, how did you feel after the procedure? Was it as liberating as you thought? Did you have the sense of relief that you were after? Could you just go on with life as normal, or was there a different picture to it?
Definitely not. In fact, quite the opposite. I guess I was hoping this was a solution to my problem, and now I would put it out of the picture and be able to get on with my life. Instead, it had the reverse effect. It left me... It's amazing how beforehand I was totally unaware, or seemed to be unaware, of the enormity of what I was about to do, and yet almost instantly afterwards on the other side it hits you like a flood. And so, no, it didn't create a release. It compounded the situation to the point of me not knowing how to move ahead in life, because now I've made a huge mistake and I can't unravel it.
Can you elaborate on the emotional, the physical and the spiritual consequences you had as a result of the abortion?
It left me with a lot of low self-worth, because I realised, how could I have done that? You know, why would I have done that? And realising how it was purely selfish motivations. You know, there was actually no logical reason aside from pure selfish ambition that stood in the way of me fulfilling this pregnancy. And so I guess for years afterwards, it left me feeling like a heartless person, like a cruel person. And also it impacted intimacy, because whereas because I guess you relate, the intimacy is causing a traumatic event, and so now you don't want to be intimate anymore because there's a mental association, and I think for a woman that becomes a reality. For a man, they don't understand that the same. They can't understand the link, and so then it adds a lot of confusion to the partner as well as to what's changed, what's wrong now, and struggling to understand what it is that's affecting the woman emotionally. Because to be honest, I think for myself, I didn't even really know what was going on. I just knew that I wasn't the same anymore. And let's face it, at 17, you're still trying to figure yourself out anyway, but now you have, you've brought upon yourself a crisis and a loss, and it's not something you can freely talk about. So because you can't freely talk about it or express it, I don't think you process it properly either. Yeah.
So talking about healing, can you tell me what hindered or what retarded this process of finding wholeness again?
I think what hindered it was the lack of feeling like I could talk about it with people. And I know society says that they don't say that you can't talk about it, but I guess the guilt and the shame inhibits you from talking about it. You're not sure how other people would respond, and even if they do respond, what do they say? I guess I spoke about it to so very, very few people. It became like my private, guilty secret. And I think that hindered the healing significantly.
Was there anything specific that aided you in the road to recovery?
I think it was probably the most significant event that drew me to Christ, to be honest. So like I said before, prior to that, I would single out Christians to try and show up their inconsistencies. And I guess I had a very self-righteous attitude, thinking, well, you're a Christian and you think you're saved and God's approving of you. I'm not a Christian, I'm a good person, I don't do harm to other people, I do the best I can to do good in this world and so forth. And now suddenly I'm aware that actually I'm not such a good person after all. That when I'm backed into a corner and I'm choosing between my own selfish way and the life of something else, I'd be willing to snuff out another life just to fulfill my own desires. So I guess it knocked me down a few notches. It helped me to put my own selfish heart into perspective. But it also left me seeking for healing. And when I heard the gospel message for the first time in its entirety, I realised that there was a heavenly Father who knew all of that. And he knew all those secrets of my heart that nobody else knew about, and yet he loved me all the same. And that he would forgive me for such a thing, and that he would love me and take me back and hold my hand through life and stand in my place one day. And so I guess it broke me, but it also drew me to the Lord, because I could see the contrast between my heart and his beauty and his unselfishness and his unconditional love in the midst of pain. Yeah.
If there's anything that you can say to someone who's contemplating abortion, what would that be?
At the moment, you might feel like you've got a lot going against you to be able to bring this child into the world and to be able to give it the best that you can. You might think that maybe you don't have a partner, or the partner that you have isn't supportive or isn't capable of raising a family. But things change. So much can change. And there's beauty in life. And there's a promise in the Bible that says that God will be a father to the fatherless. And so even though you may not have a partner, or the partner you have may be inadequate, you have a Heavenly Father. And He promises to step in that place and to provide for you and to look after you and to help you on this journey. So don't feel like you're alone. Where there is life, there is hope. And you might make mistakes, and you might not even be in a place yourself to be able to fully provide in every way for this child. But there are organisations out there to help, and there are people out there who are very passionate about supporting people just like you. And so I say pray. Pray and ask God that make a commitment to keep this baby, and then ask Him to provide for that which is lacking in your life. And if you still feel that you don't have what it takes to provide yourself for the child, or maybe you're seriously not in a mental space to be able to do so, then explore the option of adoption. There's organisations out there who can help you on that path also. You're possibly being pressured into making a decision because time's against you. The risks involved with abortion enhance greatly the further along that you are, the physical risks particularly. And so there may be pressure to hurry up and make a decision right now. I say pause, take a deep breath, go and seek some counsel from a multitude of people, and maybe seek a Christian counsellor to help to unpack some of those things that you're thinking in your mind, to put a different angle on it and try and understand a different perspective to give you clarity and a hope for the journey ahead. Yeah.
What are the myths about abortion that you would like to dispel?
Yeah, I guess the greatest myth is that children are a burden and that it's going to ruin your life. And I find it really interesting, because how is it that a child can be a burden when you're 17 and have your whole life ahead of you, but say when you're in your 20s and you're in an established relationship, that same thing, the same baby, being pregnant, having a family, is the greatest blessing that you're seeking after. And so I think it's more to do with perspective than a reality. So what needs to change is our perspective, how we look at the situation rather than what the situation actually is. It will be hard, it will be more challenging, but it's not impossible, and it can be just the greatest thing to turn your life around and to start a journey with a new little being who's your baby and your child. And there's plenty who've walked the road before us who maybe they couldn't fulfill all their dreams in their teenage years, but they come back to it later on in life and they don't have regrets. And they're older, and so they're maybe more responsible, and they may be more organised and in financially a better position to be able to do it, to fulfil their own personal dreams later on. And maybe those dreams will change too, after having a child and starting a family. Yeah.
So do you think the fact that you've had other children after, has that somehow compensated for the loss?
To be honest, I think at some point I kind of hoped it would. I hoped that as I was having my children, that this would fill that wound, and but it didn't. Every child that I've had has been an absolute blessing, and the uniqueness, but there's still a certain something missing. I was talking with a lady one day, and and someone came and spoke with her, and they said, "Oh, how many children do you have?" And she said, 8. Now, I only knew her to have 7. And she said, "Yes, I've got so many girls and so many boys, and one of our children died when they were 2. And I guess I was a bit taken aback. I was thinking, wow, you still included that child. Her children were in their 20s, when this conversation took place. She still made mention of that child that she had lost because it had such a valuable place in her heart. And it made me think about how I don't have 6 children, I have 7. And how I chose to terminate that pregnancy, but it was still a child, and it was still my child. And although I'll never get to experience the joy of raising that child, I guess it awakened something in me to realise it was still my child. And it's important to recognise that in my heart, to acknowledge that. And I think this comes in with the healing process. All these little things along the way, you start to, like little pieces that start to fill in.
Where are your family at today? And I guess I want you to sketch a picture of how God has restored, and how you can give other people that might right now be in a dire situation, how can you encourage them through your life? Where are you at now? Do you have a family? How many kids do you have? Just show us a glimpse of how God had restored 20 years later.
So the partner that I had at 17 when I was pregnant and had an abortion, I stayed with him, and a couple of years later we both gave our lives to the Lord and became Christians, and were married. We entered into a life of mission service, and I guess for me it was because I saw how the world had nothing to offer, and all the dreams and things that I was chasing were futile. So here we were. My reason for not wanting to keep this baby was because I wanted to follow my own career path, follow my dreams, establish financial security. And here we are giving our lives to the Lord to follow Him, which meant a life of financial insecurity, of choosing to walk away from that career path, of looking after animals and instead serving people. And finding such great joy in bringing healing to other people who were, some who were in situations similar to our own, or who we could relate to, and others who were totally different also. The years went by, and now we have 6 children, and I homeschool and have homeschooled them since the beginning. Our oldest is 15, down to our youngest, which are twins that are 5. The Lord has certainly provided for us through the years. When we thought we'd have nothing, He provided in abundant ways beyond measure, and has held our hand and has been the father to the fatherless. Even though I've had my husband by my side, I grew up without a dad, and my grandfather took that place, and he did a good job. And yet when I started on this Christian journey, I didn't have Christian family support around me, and yet my Heavenly Father has looked after us and led and provided, and been a healing balm to our home and to our lives.
Praise the Lord. Thank you for sharing this with us, Donna.
Thanks, Sonia.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.